Next we have nested while loops in Python. And what do we mean by nested while loops? It means writing a while loop inside another while loop. That's what we call nested while loops. So let's try to understand how nested while loops work using this example. So in this example, we have this variable n with a value 5. And here we have a while loop. All this is one while loop, right? And what is happening inside this while loop? So as long as this condition n greater than or equal to 1 will be true, this code will be executed. Now what is the value of n initially? It is 5, right? So 5 greater than or equal to 1 will be true. So it will get inside the while loop. Now inside the while loop, first we have this print statement where we are printing this n colon string and the variable n. So it will print n colon space 5. So it will print n colon space 5. That's what print function does, right? Now in the next line, we have this variable I to which we are assigning n. So n value is 5. So I value will also be 5 at this point, right? Now, as you can see here, we have another while loop, right? This while loop is part of this outer while loop, right? That's why we call this while loop as nested while loop. Now what is happening with this while loop? As long as the condition I greater than or equal to 1 is true, it is going to print Python and it will decrement the value of I to I minus 1. So initially I value is 5. So this is true. So it will print Python. It will print Python and then it will decrement the value of I to I minus 1. So I value will now become 4. One iteration of this while loop is over. So it goes to the next iteration, right? So it again checks the condition I greater than or equal to 1. I value is 4. So this condition is true. So it will again print Python and it will decrement the value of I to I minus 1. So I will become 3. So Python will be printed to the console and I becomes 3. So now it goes to the next iteration. I greater than or equal to 1 will again be true. It again prints Python and I will be decremented by 1. So again Python will be printed and I value becomes 2 now. Now again the same thing continues. I value is 2. 2 greater than or equal to 1 will be true. So again Python will be printed and now I value becomes 1. Now what happens in this iteration? 1 greater than or equal to 1 will again be true. So again Python will be printed and now I value becomes 0. Now what happens in the next iteration? So I value will be 0. 0 greater than or equal to 1 will be false. So Python will come out of this while loop and it will continue to the next statement, which is n is equal to n minus 1, which means n now becomes 4, right? Now so far what happened? One iteration of this outer while loop is completed, right? So it goes to the next iteration. Now n value is 4. 4 greater than or equal to 1 will be true. So again this code will be executed. So first it will print n colon space 4. And here we are assigning I is equal to n, which means I will become 4 now. So I value will become 4. And now what happens with this while loop? In the previous iteration, when I value started with 5, so this loop was executed 5 times, isn't it? So 5 times it prints Python and it will make I value as 0. That's when this condition will become false and Python comes out of the while loop. That's what happened, right? Now instead of 5, I value is 4 here. So if you observe, this loop will be executed 4 times. So Python will be printed 4 times and I will be decremented 4 times, which means I will eventually become 0. So when I become 0, again this condition will be false and so it will come out of the while loop. And next it will again update the value of n. N becomes n minus 3, which means n value becomes 3 now. So how long this process continues? As long as n value is greater than or equal to 1. So when n is 3, now Python will be printed 3 times. So at the end of the iteration, n value will become 2 now. So then Python will be printed 2 times and then n value becomes 1. And when n is 1, I value will start with 1. So this loop will be executed only once, which means Python will be printed only once. And at the end of the iteration, n value becomes n minus 1, which means n will become 0, right? So when n becomes 0, this condition will be false, and so Python will come out of the while loop. That's what happens. So the output of this program will be, first it prints n:5, and then it prints Python 5 times, then n:4, then prints Python 4 times, so on till when n value becomes 1, then it will print n:1, and then it will print Python only once. At the end of this iteration, n value becomes 0, and so it will come out of the while loop. So this will be the output of the program. Eventually, with more and more practice, you don't even need to write all this. By seeing the code itself, you can clearly say what will be the output. I've created a new Python file with name while_loops_3.py for this part 3 tutorial. Similarly, I placed the code for part 2 in while_loops_2.py. So that code snippets are properly organized tutorial wise. And if you are new here, let me tell you where you can find the lecture material and code snippets. You can go to the website codelogitsacademy.com, and from here you can click this Python course tab. So this will be the home page of the course, and you can see the list of all the tutorials which are part of this course. The course is divided into multiple parts, and you can see the list of tutorials in each part here. You can find navigation links on the left to go to the respective parts. For example, this particular tutorial is while loops tutorial part 3. This is part of part 5 input output functions and loops. So you can click this link to go to that part. Now here you can see the details about all the tutorials which are in this part. First, let me show you where you can find the lecture material. So you can access the lecture material using this link for all the tutorials which are in this part. So let me open it and show you. There you go. So you can access the lecture material of this part from here. And also for all the tutorials, the code snippet that is used in the lecture is provided. For example, this is the code snippet used in print function tutorial. Similarly, you can find the code snippets in all the tutorials as well. So this particular tutorial is while loops tutorial part 3, and you can access the code snippet from here. And you can even copy the code directly by using this copy to clipboard button. I highly recommend you to copy the code and run it in your own machine. Try to understand what each line of code is doing. That will really help you understand the concepts much better. In the same way, you can access the lecture material and code snippets of other parts as well. Alright, now let's get back to the tutorial. So this is the code we discussed so far. So let me run the program and show you the output. Right click, run. And just like we discussed, you can see that first it prints n:5, right? And then it will print this Python 5 times. Then it will print n:4, and then it will print Python 4 times. And then n value becomes 3, so it will print n:3, and then prints Python 3 times. Next n:2, Python 2 times. Next n:1, and then it will print Python only once. After this, n value becomes 0, and this condition will be false, so it will come out of the while loop. And we don't have anything after this while loop, so nothing else will be printed. This will be the final output. Now whenever we write a while loop, we use a Boolean condition here, right? Which means any expression that will evaluate to true or false. If it is true, the loop will be executed. If it is false, it will come out of the while loop. That's what happens. But if you see here, we are using this variable n, which has this value 5. This is not a Boolean value, right? It's not true or false. If you remember from the concept of truthy, falsy values, which we discussed earlier, you might know that we can use non-Boolean values as well in a Boolean context in Python. What do we mean by Boolean context? For example, if you take this n here, what we expect here is a Boolean value. So we call this as a Boolean context. So Python allows using non-Boolean values as well in the Boolean context. Just to give a brief overview, when we use any value in a Boolean context, it is either considered a truthy value or a falsy value. So truthy value means that behaves like a true. Falsy value behaves like a false. If you are not aware of truthy, falsy values concept, I suggest you to watch the tutorial once. It is there in this same Python course playlist. Now here in this code snippet, n value is initialized to 5, And if you see what is happening inside the loop, we are printing the value of n and we are decrementing the value of n by 1. So n value will eventually become 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, so on, right? So this is what happens. Now when it comes to numericals, only numerical 0, which means integer 0 or float 0.0, these are considered falsy values. Any other value, be it a positive integer 5 or a negative integer 9, whatever it is, which is non-zero, will be considered a truthy value. So initially n value is 5, which is a truthy value, which means it will be considered as true. So it will get inside the loop. So here we are printing the value of n, which is 5 in this case, and we are decrementing the value of n by 1. So n value now becomes 4. 4 is also truthy value. So again it prints the value of n, which is 4, and then decrements the value of n. N value becomes 3. So again it prints the value of n and it will decrement the value of n. N value becomes 2. So when n value is 2, it is also a truthy value. So again it will print the value of n and it will decrement the value of n by 1. So n value becomes 1. 1 is also a truthy value. So it will print value of n, which is 1, and now n value becomes 0. Now what happens? 0 is a falsy value, right? So this will be considered as false, and so it will come out of the while loop. So this will be our final output. So when n value is 5, the output will be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if n value had been 10, it will print 10, 9, 8, so on till 1. When n value becomes 0, that will be a falsy value, and so it will come out of the while loop. Now let me run this code as well and show you the output. But before that, let me comment out the previous code. Alright, so here n value is 5. So when you try to run this code, right click, run, it prints 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If n value is 10, you can see that it will print values from 10, 9, 8, so on till 1. Now instead of 5, what if we initialized the value of n as minus 5? Then what happens? N value is minus 5, and you have to remember that negative numbers are also considered as truthy values. Only zeros are considered falsy. So this minus 5 will be considered as truthy, and so it will get inside the loop. It will print value of n, which will be minus 5, and then it will decrement the value of n by minus 1. So n becomes minus 5 minus 1, which means n will become minus 6. Now what happens? Again minus 6 will be a truthy value. So again it will execute the code inside the loop. N value is printed, which is minus 6, and again n value becomes minus 7, right? N is decremented by 1, which means minus 6 minus 1, it will become minus 7. And you can understand that if you continue, you can never reach 0 here, right? Because when you start with a positive integer, when you decrement, eventually you will come to 0. That's when you will get a falsy value and it will come out of the while loop. But when you initialize with a negative value like minus 5, when you do minus 1 in each iteration, n value will become minus 6, minus 7, minus 8, so on. It will never reach 0. That means you will never see a falsy value, which means to say it will be an infinite loop. So the output of this program is minus 5, minus 6, minus 7, minus 8, minus 9, so on. It will never end. Let me change the value of n to minus 5. Now if we try to run it, right click, run, you can see that it gets into an infinite loop. It will never end. So we have to forcefully stop the program. With this, we have completed all the concepts related to while loops in Python. Next, we'll see a couple of practice problems so that you can understand how the concepts we learned will be useful in writing real-time programs. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.